Is it recording?
There we go. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'd like to open this regular meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Commissioners for March 15th, 2023. This is our first hybrid regular meeting, so hopefully things are going to go real smoothly. We've tested everything and hopefully it will. May we have a roll call, please?
President Zemke?
Here.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Here.
Commissioner Shane Crowley? Present. Commissioner Slater Carter? Present. Commissioner Zommer?
Present.
Okay. Public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to have a public comment. We do limit public comments to 2 minutes apiece, so please, we do appreciate you being concise and clear. Do we have any public comments?
President Zemke, there's no hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay, we can go on then to commissioner comments. Let's start with Commissioner Dormront. Any any comments that you would like to make?
No, just briefly, we had the harbor, I guess, sponsored a little event this past week with the California Coastal Commission. They were in town reviewing various projects, some of ours. I did not take it.
No.
For good reason, so, but that's a different story. But the harbor folks were there. They did a great job. Some of the other commissioners were there. And I think it went off really well. Maybe others will comment on kind of what they thought too. But it's a great event. And I think everybody really. And I think everybody really.
Good. I'm sorry I missed that. Yeah. Tom, any comments you'd like to make?
Well, I'd like to have been at the Coastal Commission meeting, but I was 9 time zones away. Some members of the public have asked me to explain what's happening with the eateries and some of the various businesses in the harbor. And I didn't have a good explanation for that. So just something to note.
Okay. Commissioner Slater Carter, any comments you'd like to make?
One of the reasons we got together with the Coastal Commission was to show them the new trail that Harbor District has put together, and all the oohs and ahs from the commissioners and the staff sounded like a gentle wind. I was so impressed by the presentation. I look forward, mark your calendars, to giving them a tour next year at their coastal and replenishment project at Surfers Beach, and the progress we're making on dredging and on keeping the interior of the harbor, putting it back where it should have been kept for a lot of years. But yeah, the trail is fabulous, and I invite absolutely everyone to go and take a hike on the trail. The native grasses are gorgeous. The width of the trail, it's not muddy anymore. It's got good, the parking lot's been rehabilitated. It's just a great place to go. So I would recommend to the general public, please come and visit it, and let's keep on going.
Thank you. Commissioner Ciancarelli.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to forward in Catherine said about the Coastal Commission's reception. It was fantastic. We had a 2-part event. One was the reception at the Old Princeton meeting after the field trip to the West Trail, which was wonderful. We had great weather, which was a blessing considering the next day the weather was terrible. But the Coastal Commission commissioners that I spoke with, and also the new executive director of the Coastal Commission, were so impressed with the field trip. They're so happy that they've been able to collaborate over the many years, 8+ years, with the Harbor District to get this West Trail project done. They view it as kind of like a pioneer thing, because we actually used funds from. They told me it was the first project that was done not using grant funds, but using general funds from a public agency. So that was impressive to them. But I want to thank John and Jim and all the staff members who helped put this together, the field trip, and to bring the commissioners to the coastal commissioners to the West Trail and bring them back. So thank you, thank you. It was kind of all put together pretty quickly, as you know, because we were in DC. But I also want to thank Catherine for reaching out to the other special districts and the partners like the Granada Community Services District, Montero Water and Sanitary District, and also Sam Sewer in Mid Coast, because they also basically help co-sponsor the reception at the OPL. And I also want to thank Mark Massara, who worked with Catherine and kind of helping us reach out to the Coastal Commission during the time when you, Jim, and I were on the East Coast. So thank you, thank you. And also Brian Overfeld, the owner of the OPL, who was very gracious in opening the back area, which was packed. I think we had at least 100 guests there because everyone
Really?
loved it. Yeah.
Wow.
And other
Yeah.
agencies now want to piggyback on our success.
Mhm.
So we'll see how we're going to be involved in the future. But I think it was a great move for us as a district, and it created a lot of goodwill and future opportunities.
And I would suggest OPL again in the future. It's a great casual environment.
So
So
felt
it-
comfortable.
people feel very comfortable. The food was great. The wine and stuff was there if you wanted it. And but, and they had lots of seating and a good stage. So it was the best casual event space in Princeton. And frankly, I've been looking for some in Montero, and there just aren't any in Montero or Moss Beach. So
Yeah.
pretty much on the coast.
Yeah. So one other thing, the DC trip. I know I only have 2 minutes. We can.
That's okay.
You can have
Well,
mine come in.
Okay. So Bill, Jim, and I went to the CMAC meeting in Washington, DC, and I thought that was a success too. We built a lot of goodwill again on the national level, and we met with Kevin Mullins, staff member, deputy chief of staff there, who is very interested in learning more about the harbor district. He's on the East Coast, even though his district director here lives in Half Moon Bay. But we were supposed, so we met a lot of people, and dredging seemed to be the #1 issue that was brought up by every agency across California. So, and hearing about the issues for dredging and how, people really want this to happen with the harbor district. I think we're on our way to a good start. And that actually led to this trip, the meeting with Congresswoman Ann Eshu's office and Congressman Kevin Mullins' office, and we're just to have the tour financial situation of the banks locally. So that's going to be postponed until next Monday, the 20th.
Right.
But overall I thought it was a good meeting, and we got a lot of benefits from it. And George, we had conversations with the Army Corps, and Vic said, do I have to call him commissioner now? And I said, absolutely, you need to call him commissioner. So you're very well regarded, and I think people are very happy that you're on the board. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Thank you for those comments. I don't have anything to add to those comments that were made, but I do have an assignment, I guess, to talk about. Last meeting, we had assigned responsibilities for commissions or for committees to try and make those committees as effective as possible looking forward for this year. I would like those committees to meet sometime in the next couple of weeks and to develop basically a short mission statement for how you want to proceed this year, and a plan of schedule of how you plan to meet. And then we will have, if you'd provide those mission statements and details to Jim, he would put together in a report that we can then put on the discussion items for the next meeting. Yes, you have a question.
Yeah, so given the financial situation with the banks that are local, Silicon Valley Bank and possible other banks that are at risk, I would like to ask the finance committee to at least take a look at the portfolio. I don't know that we're in a fund and all that, but just to make sure that, what are the holdings in that portfolio? I'm on the Treasurer's Oversight Committee for the San Mateo County Treasurer, and so I already asked that of them. So I'm reading these. It's not just Silicon Valley Bank, but it's now Credit Suisse, another bank, Signature Bank, First Republic. I mean, the market is dropping for these financial institutions. So I just want to understand what our holdings are in that area.
Okay, that's directed
For
to
the
staff.
finance, yeah,
To-
well,
to
in the
look at that.
finance committee.
Okay,
'cause I think
the
that
finance
this-
committee.
yeah,
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Any further comments? Okay, let's move along to the general manager's update. Jim?
But before we start or end on this,
For commissioner comments, you could request to see if there's anybody who wants to comment.
Oh, do we have any public comments or members of the public that would like to comment any of the commissioner comments? No, okay.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we do. John Olem? Okay, John, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Just want to say holding meetings at 1 PM is not conducive to public participation. As you know, almost all the boards that exist on the closed side meet around 7 PM. The fire district that Virginia Chan Corrali serves for meets at 7 PM. The MCC, Sam, City of Half Moon Bay. Why is this the only district that insists on having its meetings at an incredibly inconvenient time of day? There's probably only 1 or 2 people here. There was only 1 person at last week's financial meeting at 9 in the morning. I don't think you've got a record of good decisions to stand on. And I don't think that hiding behind inconvenient meeting times is going to change the fact that, people are going to find out about the bad decisions you keep making. And it's all going to come to a head eventually. So please consider moving the meeting to a more appropriate time of the evening when most coastsiders could participate and at least watch what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any further comments? Any further hands raised?
No hands
Okay.
raised.
We will move now on to general managers update. Jim?
afternoon, commissioners. It's been a very, very active month. Commissioner Chan Corrali already talked about the CMAC meeting. We are actively pursuing a possible grant that they discussed and that we discussed with MARAD while we were there. And that's due in a couple of months. And so our consultant is working with the district to prepare that. And then also, they're called RAISE now. They used to be called the Tiger Grants. And we're starting to develop our application for next year's Tiger Grant rounds that are due in January. Will probably be due January 2024. So we'll have a complete package by then for the Tiger Grant. And we're really looking towards getting a grant to really fund a major portion of Johnson Pier, if we can do that. The initial grant we're looking for this year can only be used for the pier terminus and not the floating docks, but we can split that project if necessary if we do get that grant. So we'll keep you up to date on those grants. I also provided tours, a 2-hour tour to Supervisor Dave Pine and Supervisor Ray Mueller last week. It went fantastic. We started at Johnson Pier and ended over at the West Trail, and which included stops at Surfers Beach also with a boat launch ramp, and discussed in detail the shortfall in funding that's required to properly properly staff, train, and equip the deputy harbor masters at Pillar Point Harbor to effect search and rescues and or maritime assists. Just last weekend, again, we were called out by the sheriff to go assist with 2 separate rescues, one making the news of the surfers were down in the cove that the fire department rescued. But seaside, we were the ones in the water. And the weekend before that was, or the weekend with the heavy winds 2 weeks ago, we were able to save 2 vessels that were adrift and tow them in safely before they washed up on the rocks in the marine sanctuary. So preventing any environmental damages. So we're very, very active. And when we are properly staffed, we're able to respond, and we respond quite often. And we discussed that in detail, and any possible funding sources or ideas from the supervisors is going to be welcome. And I'll be following up with both of them on that aspect. And then as Commissioner Chen Corrali mentioned, we have scheduled Congresswoman Anna Eshoo is going to be visiting for the same tour, along with staff members from Congressman Mueller's office. So, or Mullen, sorry, office, and look forward to doing that tour next week.
Do we have any public comments on the general manager's report? Are there any hands raised?
No public comment.
Okay. Do we have any commissioner comments on the general manager's report? Yes.
Jim, I saw that salmon season is going to be delayed significantly. How is that going to affect our revenues?
Salmon season's closed this year for sure, and probably next year. There's a good chance. So Pillar Point Harbor and the fishermen out of Pillar Point Harbor will not have a salmon season off the coast of California. It's just closed. So
for the entire West Coast or just?
I don't know how far, it's for the West Coast River. So I don't know if it goes up to Washington and Oregon or
I
not.
read that it went into Oregon.
Yeah, so
Washington is okay.
so if they're going to get salmon, they got to go a lot further than just right off the coast here. But it's going to really hurt off the boat sales for salmon sales, because the salmon's just not coming in. And also the 3 fish buyers will be significantly impacted because they will not be offloading salmon from the fishing boats either. And then the new regulations for rock cod and rock bottom fish changed the fishing season or how you can fish for them and where you can fish for them, and making it more difficult for our charter boats to go out with charter parties to go rock fishing, and also the commercial rock fishers, making it more difficult for them. So we'll feel that impact also in the harbor. We're hoping the squid season hits us this year. It was down south last year. We're hoping it's moved up to Northern California, but we don't know yet.
So
Yeah, we can prepare a report for the finance committee.
okay, because crab season wasn't that great either.
No,
Right, and so, and as we go into contract negotiations and just, I don't know, the environment that we're in, I would like to get an understanding of the real financial impact that all of this is gonna have on us.
we've had at least one fish buyer ask for rent relief based on the fact that there's no salmon season. We can include that in the finance report to the finance committee.
Okay, okay. And then the other thing, just another quick item is, if we can put in here next time, any kind of dredging update. I know that the community is very concerned about dredging, especially after the rains, and how erosion keeps happening and the roads keep, deconstructing or being destroyed. So I'm just hearing from different folks around not just here, but actually even further south in Half Moon Bay.
During the West Trail tour and the Coastal Committee meeting, I was able to talk to some of the staffers of the Coastal Commission And they've asked for more information. So we're providing that information to them. I signed another transmittal letter this morning, forwarding information to them. Now they have to receive that information and then respond. We're fast approaching the end of the growing seasons or the start of the growing seasons. And our ability to turn around a contract and actually get contractors on site to start the dredge and to move the plants in the growing season is quickly closing this year. So there's a very good chance we will not be able to start the project this year. We'll have to wait until May of
2024.
2024. And
Because it just.
it's
keeps
all
getting
permitting.
delayed.
it's all permitting issues.
Wow.
We had to resubmit the permitting request to the Marine Sanctuary on a new form because the old form expired. So I signed that last week. So they're reviewing that. And then Coastal Commissions has, again, several questions that needed a lot of research to respond to them. And we were able to get that information to them. We're waiting on their response, and they have significant staffing issues on turning projects around. So I don't know when we'll get a response from them or a signed permit to be able to start work. We're ready. We have the funds. It's the permit issue.
Yeah, and the time is not on our side in this situation, especially from an economic impact perspective.
And the board is going to get a full report next month from our consultants on exactly where we are with the Surfers Beach replenishment project and what still needs to be done with the permitting.
So will there be any impact on the harbor, the boat ramp channels, or any of the other channels that would require dredging between now and then?
That'd be a separate issue if the boat launch ramp gets silted in. And right now it's not silted in.
Just later, Carter.
Yes, as one of the members of the finance committee, I'd like to know what these delays are going to be adding in cost to each. There's between of around 6% in inflation, and planning for those dollars going up and how we're going to cover.
We'll definitely include that in the report to the best of our ability.
Yeah, no, it's a match. I realize it's a crystal ball, but
Yes.
It's better to be trying to guess than blindsided.
Well, forecasting, I think Julie, forecasting, I think is going to be important.
Any chance of emergency orders to override these delays so that we can actually get a shovel in the ground and get something? I mean, I'm not asking for an answer now, but if we could be looking into that, if the sanctuaries change their form, that's not our problem. If there's different things, it's like we can't keep being the bottom rung of the ladder.
We're in constant contact with both the Marine Sanctuary and the Coastal Commission. And they're working as fast as they can, and we're providing the information they're asking for. It's taking time for them to get through all the science on this project, because it is such a large project across the entire Half Moon Bay.
At the time is not working with us, let's just put it that way, from a financial standpoint and an actual operational standpoint and commercial standpoint.
If I might add, our consultant, Brad Damons, is, everyone's pretty familiar with Brad. He's got a very good rapport with all of the permitting agencies, and he actually attended the Coastal Commission gathering down at West Trail. Prior to that, though, he and the general manager met with key personnel from the Coastal Commission and expressed our interest in expediting the permitting. And Brad told me that he really felt optimistic. So despite what they're telling us about being overwhelmed at present, et cetera, our consultant at the general manager's direction has not given up. We're using all the influence that we have to try to move forward with at least the eelgrass mitigation portion, and moving the finer sediment from around the launch ramp to the eventual site where the eelgrass is going to be relocated out the west trail inside the outer breakwater. At least getting that portion done this season. So we've not given up. General manager is just trying to express what of course he's learned from some of the key personnel with Coastal Commission and start setting expectations.
I believe it's better to plan for the worst and be pleasantly surprised than the reverse. So I think you guys are doing a great job, particularly in working with coastal staff. My experience is the more information you can get for them, even if it seems silly to us, you give it to them. I'm figuring you probably are giving them more than they want.
Just to note, President, that this is actually item 5 under consent. So we kind of jumped all the way down to item 5.
Around a bit, yeah,
So
okay.
I
Well,
recommend we finish up with the operational reports, and then if we still need to talk about the Surface Beach project, we do it after consent.
okay. Thanks for the report, Jim. We can move on to operations. John?
President, I'm giving you a public comment.
Oh, on the operations report?
It was on the general manager.
And the general manager's order? Okay, we can take that public comment then.
Good afternoon. My name is Captain William Smith, vessel Riptide. Thank you, commissioners and harbor masters for the report. The issue that I wanted to bring forth here was generally touched on here in the comments, and I wanted to make sure that you are aware of it here, that we have completely lost our salmon season, and our rock fishing season, as the general manager said, is severely curtailed. This is, for me, that represents the vast majority of my business. As a CPFD in the harbor, we will be probably coming forward here a little later here to ask for some kind of relief in this. This is, I can't say that it's unprecedented. We have had closures before, but with the combination of the rockfish closures with the salmon is unprecedented. So we will, I want to bring that forward and make sure that that is taken into consideration going forward. We will have more information on it as the season starts to progress and as your meetings start to progress. Thank you very much. Have a fine day.
Great, thanks for your comment. We'll move on now to the operations update.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'd like to start off with Oyster Point Marina. Our occupancy there is remaining stable at 76%. Staff led by the harbor master, James Smith, and assistant harbor master, Jacob Walding. The whole team there has done an excellent job with all of these weather events. You know, we had remarkably strong winds all day yesterday. Staff were out retying vessels where owners didn't have the opportunity to make it to their boats to retie them, and make sure that there were sufficient lines for the extremely strong winds, over 50 knot winds, and replacing cleats when they gave way. A lot of the boaters don't understand that they need to tie to multiple areas, multiple sites. And when they have just all the weight of their vessel tied to just 2 cleats, it puts tremendous stress on those cleats. And staff just did a remarkable job under the leadership again of Harbor Master Smith and Deputy Harbor or Assistant Harbor Master Walding. In addition to responding to multiple small craft, kayaks, paddle boarders, even jet skis that were in distress, using poor judgment, being out in the remarkably bad weather and rough seas in the bay. Harbor staff were able to go out and rescue multiple. Then at Pillar Point Harbor, we're still hovering close to 100%, 98% on average last month. And under the leadership of Harbor Master Chris Tibby and Assistant Harbor Master Dante Madrigal, again, staff walking the docks in terrible weather, super strong winds. The winds over here at Pillar Point were even stronger, some gusts up to 70 miles an hour, even some reports of higher than that. Which, it's just remarkable. Hurricane force winds. And we did have one vessel that broke anchor, a small 26-foot vessel that landed on the beach, but there was no oil spill or anything, just had an outboard engine. The staff were able to continually monitor all the vessels on the docks, and those that were not being taken care of by the owners, our staff put pumps in for those that were being, their bilge pumps were being overwhelmed. And we were able to stop and prevent any vessels from sinking within the harbor. It rained all day, almost 2 inches of rain we received here at Pillar Point Harbor.
Wow.
And again, unprecedented winds. In the 12 years I've been in California here, now this is the worst wind event that I've experienced. And last month, we did receive a commendation from the command duty officer with the U.S. Coast Guard for actions of Pillar Point Harbor staff going out to rescue a 30-foot boat on February 10th. The U.S. Coast Guard received a call for a distress call from this 30-foot vessel that had lost power and was in danger of landing on the rocks. And the command duty officer called our staff to respond to try to help them after determining that they were too far away. The Coast Guard was too far away to be able to assist, and the vessel assist, the private vessel assist, refused to go out because their vessel was not capable in such poor weather. Our staff, which consisted of Matt Sumner, North Cosman, Adam Bloomer, were able to go out, locate the vessel, and successfully rescue the 3 persons that were on the vessel and tow the boat into safe harbor at Pillar Point Harbor. They were assisted by Assistant Harbor Master Dante Madrigal, and of course the Harbor Master Tibby and Owen Moore, Deputy Harbor Master Owen Moore, who are all directing operations from the radio and assisting landside. Just again, an example, which was brought to our attention, obviously, by the command duty officer with the U.S. Coast Guard, who wrote a lengthy commendation that's in my staff report. All of our teams do an excellent job every day, checking on the boats, etc. And then also responding to requests for assistance, such as this one. It's not often that we actually get someone that takes the time to write a commendation. The staff, most of what they do every day goes without any notice. They do an excellent job. I'm very proud of all of them.
Let's go to show the importance of having the Harbor District staff available for this kind of rescue. It was Montero Beach that was written up in the staff report as the beach that would have been impacted. It.
As the general manager noted, several other examples, even this last Saturday and Sunday. The general manager is working diligently and I believe by all accounts successfully at trying to get us some additional revenue from some of these outside sources so that we can increase our rescue capability.
I think that makes all the sense in the world.
For the operations
Yes.
update, okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the operations update? Okay, no hands are raised. Any further commissioner comments on the operations update? Oh, yes,
I'm not sure
Commissioner Demerit.
if it's a comment or, I thought I recalled over past meetings, either to maybe put together a county-wide work group of all safety types of teams that are involved, both land side and coast side, to kind of look at a combined response, looking at funding. So we always seem to be short of funding, but maybe there's some, maybe once a year safety committee. We don't have a safety subcommittee, I don't think, but maybe one of our together a workshop with all the different agencies involved in getting further funding from federal, from state, or whatever, to try to offset. Just saving 3 people, I mean, that's invaluable.
Okay. Can we leave that with you, John, just if that makes sense to?
The general manager is also currently working
Right.
with multiple local agencies and federal agencies to try to see if we can get some funding assistance. I'm sure the general manager will give a report on his progress.
That be something we should put on the agenda
Yes.
somewhere, maybe at a later time in the meeting, but.
It's Commissioner Chincarelli.
Yeah, let me
Check
just
problem.
really quickly, I think it was either October or November of 2021, Jim put together a very extensive and excellent report on the search and rescue capabilities and needs.
Mhm.
So, and then we talked about this, I don't even remember, 2022 again, I think sometime. I want to say it's almost exactly a year later. So this issue is going to continue to be relevant. And so if we do something, I don't know, I would take the general manager's lead because he's working on this
Right, okay.
extensively and looking at different funding sources. But if it's something that we need to do as a district because of what we are providing in terms of services, I mean, putting together an ad hoc committee may not be a bad idea, but I do want to take the lead from the general manager because this is not a new thing. This issue has been going on since 2020, actually since 2020, but a formal report was written in 2021 as the first report.
And that's available online?
Yeah, I think it was October, November of 2021 was your first report. Yeah.
Okay.
Get together for them to hear the technical aspects of what needs to be done. So it's really, the technical people know what they need.
Yeah.
So that's really not the push. The push is to get the politicians
Yeah.
there to say, hey, we need to fund these people when they're doing these kinds. Get that awareness to that other level.
Yeah, so an ad hoc committee might work.
Yeah.
At some
I think we should be planning on talking to the politicians early in their budget season so that they can start budgeting for it instead of waiting. It may be that we want to plan this event maybe a year from now, a year, maybe in January of next year. So that we can give them some hard data and say, this is the money that we need and that other agencies have said, and let's get working on this. It's my experience that people are getting less and less savvy about self-protection. taking care of themselves on the ocean or even on the beach. So we need missions and the bean counters.
I would
Yes.
suggest that, just so that everyone's caught up, Jim, that maybe you send the reports out to the commissioners again for review.
And a link to the October
No,
report.
yeah,
Yeah, the two actually, 2021 and 2022, I think.
Just some final comments from on this. I'm actively working with local elected leaders, both at the state and the federal level, and discussing this specific topic. And hard numbers have been provided to them and will be provided to them. And I'll be following up with each one after I meet with them personally. That was my plan, and that's how I'm moving forward, unless the board has different direction.
I would think that's totally appropriate, and maybe at some point, an ad hoc committee might be a better idea, but at this point, I think I'd like to keep the ball rolling, which Jim is doing.
We'll just make them understand that the more delays there are, the more expensive this is gonna be. But the beautiful part of the report in 2021 is Jim laid out the financial commitments that have to be made. But that
That's right.
report is 2 years old and those numbers are probably not gonna be the same.
I think probably at this point, we're probably
going
getting a
off
little
agenda.
off agenda here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer to just leave it with in Jim's lap on the work that he's doing right now and move ahead. We'll move along to the administrative report. Julie.
President Zupke.
This has been.
In addition to doing the regular work that the administrative team does, which includes all of the human resource activities, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, we continue to make strides in bringing the district up to the century. We implemented the ERP system, but there's a lot of modules and a lot of information that can be better utilized. So we're continuing to look at our business processes, the policies that we need to support with those business processes, automating and organizing district records. And so in addition to our regular duties, we're continuing to move in that direction. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on the administrative? Okay, no public comment. Any brief comments from the commission on the administrative report?
We think I'm wrong.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you for those reports. Moving on to item number E, the consent calendar. Are there any, let me ask for public comments on the consent calendar. Are there any comments, public comments on the consent calendar? Okay, we have none there. Do we have any commissioner comments on the consent calendar?
I would just
Commissioner
like to-
Chancro.
I would like to just pull off item 5.
Okay. We will pull off item 5 and make that item number 9 here just before the closed session.
And I have a question about the committees. And I'm not quite sure what it's under. I thought it was under minutes, but it's, if I look at the pages, it's under item 3, so I'm not sure. But it does say standing committees, ad hoc committees, and then it, as an ad hoc committee, it was an Army Corps of Engineers liaison. So I or a liaison, and we should talk about having, maybe breaking that out into its own thing.
An ad hoc committee.
It's an ad hoc committee. But when I asked to join the committee, I was told it was a
Well,
liaison.
it's, wait, maybe it's confusing. Do you want to pull that and we can talk about the regular
Please,
meeting? Okay,
please.
let's pull number 3 or item number 2 and put that as item number 10. Okay, any other further comments?
I move to approve the consent items 1, 3, and 4.
Okay,
Second that.
it's been moved and seconded that we approve items 1, 3, and 4 on the consent calendar. May we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
Commissioner Chen Carlin? Aye. Commissioner Slater Carter?
Yes.
Commissioner Barra?
Aye.
President Zemke?
Aye. Okay, that brings us down to discussion items number 6. Julie.
And today we have Vicky Rodriguez with us from Mays and Associates. And she will be presenting the district's 21-22 fiscal year audited financial statements. Vicky, this is the first year that she was part of the audit for the district. There is a state law that requires the auditors rotate every 6 years. And so for those of you who were here last year, she has replaced David Alvey. And with this, I'll hand it over to Vicky to give you a summary of those financial statements.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But before I do that, I just wanted to kind of give the high level results. And then I was going to provide some of the highlights in the report and then open it up to any questions. So we have completed the audit for fiscal year ended June 30, 2022, and we have issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the cleanest opinion that the district can receive. So congratulations for that. In your package, you've received 3 different reports from us. That's the basic financial statements, as well as the memorandum on internal control, which is also known as a management letter, and the required communications. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Let's see. Okay, and now you can see the basic financial statements, hopefully. So the highlights I wanted to provide. So this is our independent auditor's report, or our opinion. And here I just wanted to note again that we did provide an unmodified opinion. We did include an emphasis of a matter in the opinion for a change in accounting principle. And this is related to a governmental accounting standards board to leases that required municipalities to record leases, whether they're capital or operating, on the district's financial statements. So the impact of this GASB was that we did have to record a restatement of the lease receivable and an offsetting deferred inflow of resources of about 2.2 million. The net impact to the net position of the district related to this restatement is 0. So there was no impact to the net position. As part of this GASB, management did decide to establish a threshold of 200,000 for reporting its leases. And so with that, the district has recorded 7 leases that are all leases where the district is the lessor. So these are leases receivable. And we'll go into that when we get into note 9, which is a new footnote in the financial statements. So the management's discussion and analysis, I just want to point out that this is written by district staff, and this discusses the significant fluctuations from 2021 to 2022 and provides information on financial highlights. Flipping through to the statement. So the statement of net position is also known as a balance sheet. And so the significant fluctuations here is that this year you see the lease receivable of 2.1 million. And then with that, there's also this offsetting lease related deferred inflow of about 2 million as well. And then there's a footnote 9 that details those leases. The other significant fluctuations I wanted to point out here is the construction in progress increased from 2.4 million to almost 7 million. And you'll see more details in note 3 with that. And then the other major fluctuations, or more significant fluctuations, I should say, is the net pension liability did decrease from 2.9 million to 285,000 this year. And so we'll talk about that a little as we go into the footnotes. The next page is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, also known as an income statement. And so you'll see that the operating expenses did decrease from 11 million to 7.6 million. You did have an increase in property taxes. And then your changes in net position, you did have a healthy increase in net position of about 6.6 million. And a lot of that is related to that change in the net pension liability, as well as increases in the construction in progress.
Oh,
Now
no.
I'll go. No, no. So that's all good things, So nothing negative here. So going into the footnotes, the ones I mainly wanted to highlight. So capital assets, as we mentioned, your construction in progress did increase by 4.6 million. Most of that is related to the West Trail Shoreline Protection Project, which was about 4 million. Then you also have the dock replacement as well as the ERP system. So those are the more significant increases in your construction in progress. And then down below here in the buildings and improvements, it did increase by close to 3 million, and that's related to the purchase of the admin building. Okay, other significant changes. So note 7 is the net pension liability. So as I mentioned, that the net pension liability decreased very significantly by more than 2 million. And what I want to point out here is that the net pension liability is based on actuarial valuation, and the valuations are always at least a year behind. And so in the footnotes, you'll see that the net pension liability is measured as of June 30, 2021. So just if everyone recalls, in 2021, the market was really good for that year. So this really impacted the valuation, and so the one main thing that I want to point out is that next year you can expect the net pension liability to increase again, just because the numbers for 2022 were definitely nowhere near how positive 2021 was. So just keep in mind that there is this really large fluctuation this year, decreasing the net pension liability, but you're going to see this net pension liability increase significantly in 2023, and then again in 2024. And even in our footnotes, like we show the actuarial assumptions. So for the June 30, 2021 valuation, they were using a discount rate of 7.15%. That rate is going to decrease, and we did disclose that here where we talk about the reduction of the CalPERS discount rate. They are expecting to change the discount rate down to 6.9% for next year. And so this little table here, I do like to highlight this table here on this page where it shows the sensitivity of the net pension liability calculation based on just one factor that they use in the actuarial valuation. So remember that they use quite a few different factors when they're calculating the estimated net pension liability, one significant one being the discount rate. And so this table here just shows you how sensitive, as of June 30, 2022, you're showing a net pension liability at 285,821, and that's using the 7.15% discount rate. And here you can see that if they had decreased that to 6.15%, that the net pension liability would actually be 3 million. So that's why I'm saying that next year, when they decrease this discount rate to 6.9%, again, you can expect that that liability to shoot back up. Let's see. Okay, so that's the net pension liability. Then the other significant one is, here's the new footnote relating to leases. So again, this,
Sorry,
I'm
Vicki.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
One of our commissioners has a question on that.
Oh, sure.
So they're gonna, is there any prediction of how low the discount, offers discount rate is gonna be? It's down, they're gonna do a downward movement of 0.2%, right?
So they're decreasing it down to 6 point, sorry, let me go back up there. They're decreasing it next year to 6.9. I imagine that they're going to continue to decrease it slowly over the next few years. I'm not sure if Julie has any other information that maybe CalPERS might have disclosed, but this is what I know at this time. And then my understanding is that they are planning to continue to decrease it over the next few years, but they're just trying to smooth that the impact on the liability. Other questions?
Are there any other questions from the commission?
Okay, and then so note 9 is the one talking about the leases, so that this gives you just the details on how it's calculated, and then you'll see these 7. There are the 7 leases that were recorded. Again, all of these because they met the threshold of the $200,000 net present value overall of the leases, and then any future leases that are over 200,000 will be recorded as well. And so with that, let me go ahead. The other reports, so the memorandum on internal control that you received, this note, so as part of the audit, we do review the internal controls. We get an understanding of the internal control environment and perform tests on the internal controls. And based on our review and testing, we have found the controls to be adequate, and we did not detect any material weaknesses, nor do we have any significant deficiencies to report. Also included in the memorandum on internal control is just information about upcoming GASBs. That's just information for you in case you need something to help you to go to sleep at night. But nothing too crazy that's going to impact the reports over the next few years. The required communications is really more just to talk about kind of how the audit went and if there were any significant changes in accounting policies or anything like that. Overall, this again was my first year performing the audit, and I feel it went very smooth. Julie, Boomer, and Ray were all very good about providing us with everything timely and responding to our questions. And they did definitely a full review of the financial statements. And we had no difficulties in the audit and no significant audit adjustments as well. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Okay. And with that, are there any questions related to any of the 3 reports or the audit process at all?
Commissioner Chancarelli, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. Thanks for the with regard to the unfunded pension liabilities, about 5 or 6 years ago, we paid down 50% of that. And I'm not suggesting we do this again. I'm just, do we?
I'm sorry, the sound cuts out every once in a while, and I missed that last part.
What was the, how do you view the effect of that 50% pay down to be on our financials of the unfunded pension liabilities that we did?
Okay, let me just make sure I heard the question correctly, because it cut out again. So you're asking what would be the impact on your net pension liability if you paid down 50% of it?
We paid down 50% of this, about 5%.
Of the pension life. So that may be
what you have is a pay down, the numbers that we're working with, right? So I'm just curious, because I've heard, I mean, I think it's a good thing, and I think at the time the board thought it was a good thing. I just want to get your thoughts on that, if you think that that was a good thing.
I mean, definitely anything that you can do to pay down these liabilities, whether it's the pension or the OPEB, or sorry, the other post-employment benefits, OPEB, any time that you can pay down those liabilities, that is great. One thing to consider, like what I'm seeing other municipalities do with the net pension liability, is basically what they're doing is setting up like a section 115 trust, so an irrevocable trust, where you can start setting aside monies for pension
like the side
contributions.
Like the side.
The side, well, this is so the 115 trust would be more where the district has more control over what investments, like the investment types that it's investing in. And so you're not just locked into sending the money to PERS and it's just kind of factored into the whole pool, right? So a section 115 trust is something that you would make an arrangement, and you can decide what types of investments that you're willing to utilize that for. So that would not, that doesn't decrease the net pension liability, but what it does is you would have restricted cash and investments on your financial statements, and then that money would be set aside for pension benefits. So that's what quite a few agencies are starting to do that now. The other thought is, just kind of considering between pension and OPEB, like looking if you do have, kind of unexpected funding or any surplus funding that can be set aside for these liabilities, is, trying to determine also whether it makes more sense to, fully fund your OPEB or put it towards the pension. But there's a lot of different factors that you can do with that. But again, I think if and I can't recall just off the top of my head if the side fund is completely paid off, but that would be, I would probably start with that as far as like making sure that the side fund is paid off, and then look into the 115 trust.
So for the 115 trust, Vicki, what percentage of unfunded liabilities have you seen in terms of going into that pot from other agencies doing this?
It really varies. I mean, it's, like, we audit a lot of different municipalities. So, I mean, I've seen some cities put in, millions of dollars into it. It really is just part of like your budgeting process to determine what amount feels comfortable. And I also have seen where just part of the budgeting process that they're planning, like 200,000 a year for the next 5 years, that kind of thing. So it really is just kind of looking at your operational budget, long-term planning, and determining, what amount can be contributed to that. Because just the one thing to remember is just with the irrevocable trust, it is irrevocable. So once the money is put in there, you have to make sure that you do have sufficient reserves, for the emergency funding, things like that, before putting investments into the irrevocable trust. But that, so there's not really a one size fits all. I kind of see it all over the place. Like I said, I've seen some agencies just do like one lump sum of like 1 to 2 million. I've seen other agencies that just kind of set aside, 200,000 a year, that kind of thing.
So one last question. So who manages this money for the trust?
So that would be the arrangement that you make. So depending on, so there is a trust that you can do through CalPERS, that's the CERBT. And so the arrangement with that would be that CalPERS is managing that. I've also seen like PARS where you can either have PARS fully, like where it's like pooled with others, or you can have it self-managed where you determine, what risk level. So it's kind of like when you're doing like a 401k where you decide how risky you're willing to go. So there's usually like, a few different alternatives that can be selected with that as far as the investment strategy. And then there are other separate institutions that you can set up the trust with, where if you have a committee that wants to manage the portfolio, there's that option as well. So there's a lot of different options with the 115 trust.
More flexibility in staying in CalPERS.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Sounds like there might be more flexibility in a 115 irrevocable trust than there would be in CalPERS in terms of investment.
Yeah, so with CalPERS, like, CalPERS tells you what your contribution rate is each year. So you do have to make those contributions. But yes, the irrevocable trust is definitely a good vehicle for setting aside funds, and it's not just subject to the CalPERS pools.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the commission?
I'd just like to thank the finance staff. They did an excellent job, and it was a difficult year because of the implementation of the ERP system. So thank you to Vicki, and thank you to the Boomer, Ray, Kenyep.
Julie, do we have any, excuse me, do we have any public comments on this item? No public comments? Any further comments from the commission?
Zemke, if I could.
Yes.
Julie stated the great work of the staff, but also significance, at least for me, is the fact that we had to switch to a new auditor this year. We had the same auditor for 3 years in a row. I think it was 3 years before that, or more. And so Vicki had to come in and learn our system from scratch. And even though we completely revamped it from ground up, we've got a clean audit coming back. So that wasn't just because our mistake, that was dedicated work by our staff to ensure that, and our financial policies, which also ensure that. So I just want to commend Julie and Boomer and Ray, all the administrative staff, for making sure that we do this and continue to earn clean audits and national recognition for our budgets. So fantastic team we have.
Good job.
And thank you, Vicki.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thank you.
Move along then to item number 7, the first look at the financial report for financial year 2023-24 capital budget and capital improvement plan. Julie, this is yours as well.
For you today is the draft fiscal year 2023-24 budget document. And I'm just going to go through this at particular areas that I'll hit on, but if you've seen anything in the budget that you'd like to ask questions on, please feel free to do so at any time. First, there are 4 sections in the budget. The introduction section, section 1, which is our operating budget, section 2, which is the capital improvement budget. And then there is section 3 that contains the fiscal policies and definitions and some abbreviations in those definitions. Peter decided to work again. So the executive summary, this is the letter from the general manager to the board, and this is all in draft format at this point in time. At the April meeting, you will be presented with the preliminary budget, and that will be for consideration of adoption. On page 8 is the budget process. The Harbor Commission approves appropriations at a very high level, and those levels include salaries and benefits, non-personnel expenditures or operating expenditures, and capital projects. There is another section called non-operating expenditures that would include things like our election costs. The Finance Committee actually has reviewed this document, and I should have started off with that. I don't know if the Finance Committee wants to chime in and give a summary of the Finance Committee report. But the chair, Commissioner Mateusz, and Commissioner Slater Carter, they have looked at the same draft, and they've recommended a few changes to this document. So those have all been incorporated. So the budget calendar, going back to the budget calendar, on March 3rd, we met. Obviously, this is the first look of the full board. We'll have another Finance Committee meeting, it sounds like, in the next couple of weeks, so we'll schedule that. On April 19th, again, we'll receive public input and adopt a preliminary budget. May have another look at it in May if necessary. And then on June 21st, we will plan on adopting the final budget. And at any step of this process, the public has an opportunity to comment, and the commissioners, may ask for adjustments. So the priorities and performance goals, this section, which starts on the bottom of page 9, outlines all of the strategic goals that were adopted on December 18th, 2019. And those high-level goals. I can't get this little. Number 1, to have a comprehensive long-range planning guide, which guides the district's actions and decision-making. Number 2 is infrastructure improvements, which are guided by comprehensive long-term planning. Back again, sorry, apologize.
Not you.
All right, number 3, provide excellent customer service. Number 4 is enhance public safety. 5 is ensure that the public is well informed about the district. Number 6 is ensure good governance and administration. 7, ensure fiscal responsibility, strong finances and financial management. And number 8 is environmental stewardship. And so then each year, the general manager presents to the harbor commissioners the district goals for the commissioners' input, the district-wide goals and what we should be working on for the upcoming calendar year. Then those calendar year goals and objectives are broken into fiscal year goals and objectives for budget reporting purposes. So for last year in 2022-23, I don't know, Jim, do you want to go through these for the commissioners or?
Commissioners would like to go through each one. We've gone through these a few different times already.
Yeah.
So we can pass over that section.
Yeah, I think so. We have gone through this before. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're pretty self-explanatory and they are a well done project by the previous boards, and I love the little icons that are colored icons. I'm simple, that make things very clear and quick. And this is certainly my opinion, when the finance committee puts together our mission statement, I know exactly which pages I'm going to go to for our mission statement.
Julie, I would have one comment on page 11. Under the capital improvement projects, when I went through this, I had, maybe it's my own familiarity with it, remembering exactly what was funded, capital funded, what was capital funded and what wasn't. And I'm wondering if on item 6, if we want to put a note there at the end that refers back to section 2, which gives on page 48, gives a full listing of all of the funded capital projects, which is quite extensive. So just
and item number 6 on page 11,
Yeah.
there is a comment. Oh no, that's okay, sure.
it identifies some of them, but it leaves some off. So I think
Yeah.
maybe just referring to the list in page 48 would probably help people, or make it easier for them to follow it.
And let me ask you a question, because that's a great, how did y'all come up with these 4 to highlight in this section?
Those were from last year's budget. So that was just a copy from last year's budget. And then below that for the 2023-24 are any additional work that we plan on doing on both these projects and other projects.
One other comment on still in the section, backing up a bit to the chart on page number 7. There's a little asterisk there that says forecast. And I don't know if it's really necessary or not, but one thought that crossed my mind is that those forecast figures exclude any future projects that we're going to allocate funds to.
Those forecasts include any capital projects that we've identified in the capital project.
Capital project, but it doesn't include projects that we may identify in the future to those. Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Further expand on why those 4 projects were listed, because we have the permits. I was hoping for D, we'd have the permit too, but A, B, and C, we have the permits and we have the funding to complete those projects, or at least break ground on all those projects this year. And really focus on continuing to put pressure on all the aspects of program management to continue to build these projects out and make them a reality. So I wanted to put a focus on that. So that's why we listed those in the budget as they are.
I didn't, maybe I missed something, but it wasn't that clear to me.
And this,
I mean,
these
if
are,
someone were to pick this up and read it, right?
these are also the same ones I presented in January.
I know.
Slide
If
out.
this is gonna be a public document for the budget, maybe we can mark that in there. So,
Are you saying reference it by the ones that have funding and permits?
yeah,
As,
Funding and expected either have the permit or we expect to get the permits this year.
right, make some kind of note.
Just so that for the benefit of the public, is they're gonna just take this document and see it for the first time. They're not gonna have the benefit of listening to this unless they go back to.
No, I think it needs to be a standalone document and foreseeing what's coming in the future, knowing that it has funding and permits is like a big relief.
For the diversion, right?
No, that's
Well,
good.
no, it's not important. I mean, you brought up a good point, though. I just.
Next part of the operating or the introductory section is just if some member of the general public picks this up in, say, Utah, they'll know where San Mateo County Harbor District is, and a little bit of the history.
I love the old aerial photos. I mean, I think it's really important to see how developed things have happened in 80 years.
So the next section just gives a little bit of demographics and statistics and the economic information on San Mateo County in general. Some of this information comes directly out of San Mateo County's financial statements. And again, I won't go into all of the detail, but if anyone would like to hear a little bit more about this, please stop me in it, and then I can. Section 1 starts our operating budget. This is really where the forecasting begins. And the assumptions are made on certain things. So the district revenue streams for fiscal year 23-24 are expected to exceed ongoing expenditures. And that is by 3,897,000 is the estimate. That's an 18.59% decrease from the fiscal year 22-23 projection of 4,787,000. And I'll go through the reasons of that. This table shows a summary of those variances, of the percentage variance for each line item. Operating revenues are budgeted to decrease by a very small amount, 0.46%, due to a projected decrease in the SAVE grant, which is offset by a projected inflationary increase of fees of 4.9%. The fee schedules will be presented to the Harbor Commissioners for future consideration. The 4.9% is the inflationary increase as published by the Consumer Price Index report for the Bay Area. Non-operating revenues are budgeted to increase by 3.54% due to projected increase in property tax of 4.79%. And that's partially offset by lower estimated interest expense due to the projected decrease in cash balances and the elimination of COVID-19 grant, of which we received this year of $77,000. Salaries, wages, and benefit expenditures are projected to increase by 20.12% due to estimated wage and benefit cost increase, along with anticipation of being fully staffed. And there are currently 4 vacancies that the district is in process of filling, although we just did fill 2 of those 4 this past week. In addition, workers' compensation insurance costs are expected to increase by $102,000 due to workers' comp claims filed in 2022. Non-personnel expenditures are budgeted to decrease a slight amount, and that is because we're anticipating a 5% inflation increase offset by projected decrease in vessel destruction costs. We have a large projection this year, this current fiscal year, because we're working really hard to get rid of some of the dilapidated boats in the harbor, and John and Jim and all of the operations staff is doing a fantastic job with that. And in addition, there's a more aggressive collection process that Jim has been spearheading. We still don't have, maybe you've heard from the elections department, but as far as I know, we still don't have the bill for the past election. So I was hesitant into the 22 election, yeah. I expect it to be lower than the 745, but I didn't put a projection in there at this time. Capital expenditures and associated capital contributions are expected to decrease because more projects are being completed in 2022-23, such as the Pillar Point Harbor Public Restroom at Surfers Beach, and the public restroom at the retail center, Pillar Point Harbor parking lot improvements, the design and engineering for the Pillar Point Harbor Johnson Pier and Dock reconfiguration, Oyster Point Marina navigational aids replacement, design and engineering for Pillar Point Surfers Beach restoration and dredge project, design and engineering for Oyster Point Marina East Dock replacement, and design and engineering for the Pillar Point Harbor Retail Center. So that's a lot of projects in this year.
You guys are gonna be so busy.
Good money.
I won't go through the list of next year. I'll say that to when we go to the capital project section. And then the next table is a comparison a bit against what the revised budget was, what we had projected last budget cycle, and what we're projecting to do, the actual results that were expected to happen in as of this coming up June. And so it looks like we're going to be doing better than what we anticipated by about $2 million. And that's due to higher than anticipated property taxes. Operating revenues at Oyster Point Marina are tracking above what they were budgeted for because of the influx of the Oyster Cove tenants. Higher than expected and rate of return on our investments. The $7,000 grant that we received for COVID. The salaries and wages were below where we budgeted due to vacancies and leaves of absences. Non-personnel expenses are anticipated to be below because we have lower legal costs and the elimination of night security at Oyster Point Marina. And workers' comp balances are expected to decrease less than what we had expected them to decrease by And that's because of all the previous things that I mentioned. The next section goes into some of the economic factors, previous district and board actions, and state and federal budgets and actions. Basically, we're in a time of economic uncertainty. We don't know where we're going. The feds are continuing to increase rates so that they can not have such high inflation. Unemployment rate is still extremely low in San Mateo County, 1.9%, even though we're having all these tech layoffs and stuff. So they're expecting that to go through the system, I guess, sometime soon. Our public employees pension, like the auditor mentioned, expected to increase this year. And as Commissioner Jane Crowley mentioned, the board did pay down the net pension liability. And we did save money through that process. What the CalPERS does is it smooths the charges and the liability. At one point of time, there was these huge fluctuations that we were paying millions of dollars and then getting rebates and then paying and rebates. So what they've done is they've tried to smooth our contributions. And so we're not recognizing all of the savings all at once, but we're recognizing it as it moves through over the next 10 years or so.
And probably at a more even rate.
Right, yeah. Exactly, yes. And in 2015, 2016, the board made a payment to the Department of Boating and Waterways, which is now the Division of Boating and Waterways, paid off a $5.9 million loan. The federal and state budget actions, I don't know if you remember last year, there was a lot of talk about ERAF and the changing of the ERAF. Again, thanks to our general manager, the work of CSDA that now has seemed to have gone away, at least for now. Other factors, we have a lot of aging infrastructure. We need money to fix the aging infrastructure. We have about 65% of the district's total assets have been depreciated on our financial records. Tells you, how old. Great line depreciation, yeah. Services, this is our property tax table. This shows us we have expecting $9,762,000 for the 23-24 revenues, and 40% of that is being used to fund our working capital projects. 19% to fund Pillar Point Harbor's public services, things like providing public restrooms and our rescues, things of that sort, along with 12% Extra Point Marina, and then 29% of it goes to support the admin offices. Next is this is the org chart, which should be updated. We have some things with approval of the Deputy District Director of Administrative Services that needs to be updated in here. And there may be some other changes through the process of negotiations. Here's the staffing authorization. And page 28 talks about the budgetary financial statements and as opposed to the accounting financial statements. So what the auditor just went through, the things like the GASB 87, that doesn't have any impact on the budget. We are forecasting cash, really. So any long-term liabilities and long-term revenues are not being reflected in this budget document, as it's more about cash flows, what you're giving us authority to spend this year, what projects you want to fund and how we're going to fund those. So it's basically modified accrual we're using for budget and full accrual for our accounting. Then there's a lot of detail in here, line items. Then we go into all the department information. We all are working on our goals and objectives for this coming up year. So the yellow highlighted items will be presented to you at the preliminary budget meeting. So it's a lot of detail. And then the next section that we get into is the capital project budget. And as part of this, there's also a 5-year forecast that kind of shows us where we might be in 27, 28, fiscal year 27, 28. Again, these are making some assumptions. The operating revenues will increase 2.5% for the next 5 years, along with the non-personnel expenditures. So those two items kind of offset each other. The property tax, because we don't know where we're going, and I think every year, the last 3 years, we've been saying we don't know what commercial property is going to do. A lot of those properties are vacant. There's large vacancy rates. It takes a while for these things to kind of smooth out. We are in a really desirable area, so it might not decrease, but this forecast shows a 1% decrease over the next 4 years. This year, we're projecting what's on the assessor's records, which is a 4.7 increase in property tax. So this coming up fiscal year 23, 24, 4.7% increase.
Right, but then down after
Those will be the bills that are going out on July 1st, right? Yeah, but the assessor's records are putting all of the value of the property in January. They have of this, yeah, January of 2023. So we have a good idea of what we're going to expect in property taxes next year, which I believe is a 4.7% increase. So we're starting at a very high level, and then we're saying, okay, it's gonna maybe gradually increase. And then salaries and benefits, because of COLA increases and step increases, we would expect a 5% increase, plus benefit costs and public pension costs continue to increase.
What is the percentage?
Let me go back. I guess I don't really have the benefits broken out between the cost of the public pension and the actual medical and the schedule. That $5 million is salary and wages, and about 2 million is for benefits, which includes pension. But I have to get you that number. Right now, we're paying approximately 10% for classic members and 7% for Pepper members. Salary, so that kind of gives you.
Does that include, that brings it, that takes into consideration the Pepper versus the classic, right? I know we know this, I just haven't had a look at this. Because the Pepper employees are, that's what we're working.
The Pepra, all new employees are Pepra unless they came from another CalPERS agency. And they didn't have a break in service in the last 6 months. So here, see our projection. This is page 29. This is the detail.
To understand the percentage.
I would say about 1 million of that $2 million in benefits is our pension costs. But I can verify that for you.
I mean, yeah, I just want to make sure that we're planning this so that but also keeping in line with our budget.
Salary wages.
Yeah. To be balanced as we understand possible squeeze on revenue.
Right. So what I would hope is because CalPERS has the smoothing,
I know.
that it's not going to go crazy, but
But I mean, but that could also not give us the full picture, right? Because smoothing is supposed to be smoothing rather than your picture.
right. Well, and so this has been a banner year.
Right.
For 21-22, we only had $200,000 in a liability, right? That's what you just showed.
The auditor just mentioned.
Right. And so next year that will probably flip by $2 million and go right back up.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the estimate, right?
Right.
It's gonna go back up.
Right. And that's why those kinds of things are not budgeted.
Yeah.
The liability, long-term liabilities aren't budgeted. So it doesn't show all those big swings year to year. But so here, 67% of our operating budget goes to salaries and benefits.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but we still don't have enough money to fund all the capital projects that we want to do, so. Okay, so going back to the long-term plan. And then it goes into detail of all the capital improvement projects. I know that you've pulled the capital improvement staff report off the consent agenda. I don't want to go through discussions twice. I think that we can go through this in detail, but I'll open it up to you, and maybe either Jim or John want to go through the list here or wait till the consent agenda update item.
We can go through it now if you want. Oh, well, I was kind of waiting till Julie gets done with her report. I know we've been asking questions, but
Thank you.
Okay, so would you like to do this, John?
You want to
or
go
Jen?
down each, you want to talk about each project?
Well, that's
Or is
what's
there
in the budget
particular-
document.
Talk about one project.
Is there any particular project that the board?
Yeah, we can,
call it individual ones.
Yeah, well,
these
that's
are all
my-
individual projects we've discussed in the past
Yeah,
that were outlined last year and again, updated for this year.
Oh. I can, I guess, just list them, and then if you have questions on a particular one, the Pillar Point Harbor Johnson Pier reconfiguration project. The design and engineering and permitting is funding, construction costs are not. Pillar Point Harbor Tenant Row 88 restroom project, that's what, done soon?
I think the biggest point on the list of projects right now is the only addition was separating out Oyster Point Marina dock replacement 12, 13, and 14, which included the Oyster Point Marina access ramp docks for docks 1 through 6 and 11. We separated those out because we need to move forward with the ramps for docks 1 through 6 and 11 now, because they're a hazard and they flood during every king tide. And we simply, there's no money in the budget for the $18 million required for docks 12, 13, and 14, which includes a significant amount of dredging. But we do have money in our budget as proposed to fund the $1.5 million for the new entrances for docks 1 through 6 and 11. That's the only major change that was made in the list of projects. All other projects have already been presented to the board and approved by the board.
Like me to continue or go through like the pictures or,
I don't think we need to go through the individual.
all right, okay. So that concludes my presentation.
Okay, we had a, excuse me, a public comment on Julie's report.
unmute.
It looks like he put a question in the chat if we want to read it. Says, what is John spearheading? What dilapidated boats are you referring to?
We get Alejandro unmuted so we can ask that question verbally.
He should be.
Answer that question. I believe Julie referred to us spearheading a process to where we are continuing to identify delinquent accounts and vessels that are unseaworthy, which regretfully, both at Pillar Point and at Oyster Point Marina, we do have boats that have frankly just been abandoned. Others that the owners have sold the boat to persons that have not taken care of the boats adequately. And they're essentially just floating platforms that people are living on contrary to our ordinances. So we are working through the legal process to address those vessels that are not compliant with our district ordinances, either not paying or they're abandoned and or also unseaworthy. Obviously it's a danger to the environment and our docks to have vessels that are abandoned just continuing to be left in our harbor. So there is unique circumstances behind all of them, and our legal counsel is working with us to send out proper notice and to address all of them in a professional manner, and also, of course, a sympathetic manner. The general manager, as a matter of fact, one of the vessels just approved us working with that owner that is going through some hard times so that they can get current. So we're again, that's I guess that's how I'm leading the charge on that. And the general manager has also got us to where we are now meeting weekly to discuss our delinquent accounts.
Thank you for that comment. I guess, are there any further comments from the commission on the budget?
I wanted to note on page 4 that the Government Finance Officers Association awarded this finance staff in this district the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, July 1, 2022, for those who haven't. I think this is one of the most transparent budgets and gives a whole lot of explanation for those who are not quite sure what things mean and where this district is going. I think it's and I thank you very much. And I think that if other budgets were as transparent and had the summaries and the definitions and so on in them, there would be a lot fewer questions and a lot greater understanding of the public process in budgets. So thank you and your staff. This is just good reading.
Okay. I would just like to thank Julie, great presentation, and also a big thank you to the our Finance Commission, Commissioner Slater Carter and Commissioner Matoush for your input to this. And also, I know this thing has to be a major effort from the entire staff. So thanks to Julie, thanks to the support that John provides, and to Jim, the support that he provides as well. Okay. We can go on now to item number 8, the designation of labor negotiators. Jim.
President Zemke, board indicated that they would, last meeting, we had a meeting with labor negotiators that are currently appointed, which was Julie Van Hoff and myself. And the board indicated they would like to have legal counsel to be part of that negotiation team and only have legal representation, and myself as a general manager as labor negotiators. So it's my recommendation after doing some interviews that we recommended motion is designate James B. Pruitt, general manager, San Mateo County Harbor District, and Christopher Brochure, Brochure Law PC, as chief negotiators with the operating engineers, Local 3, and Teamsters Union, Local 856. And again, this will be to negotiate new MOUs that are expiring this summer.
Second.
I assume there's no public comment on this one. Okay. Any comment? Any comment from the commissioners? Okay, you can make a motion.
Oh,
Oh, you have
I'll
a
move.
motion. Okay.
Yeah,
And I second it.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we designate the the labor negotiators. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jane Crawley,
I,
Commissioner Slater Hart,
Yes.
Commissioner Donner,
Aye.
President Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Matthew.
Aye.
Okay, then we can go back to the items that we pulled on item number 2 and number 5. Let's look at number 2, the minutes. I think you had a question on it, Commissioner Slater Carter.
On item 2.
This is the minutes from,
Yeah, I'm
Well, previous
confused over the difference between a committee and a liaison.
I'm not sure that we define it per se as a district, but I think, and maybe I'm putting words in Jim's mouth, I think what we were trying to do was to draw on the experience that we have now of Commissioner Domeron, vast experience with the Corps of Engineers, one that knows the organization, knows how to deal with people, and just a wealth of knowledge that would be really a benefit to the district to have a designated liaison with that between us and that organization was really the reason we.
Well,
my
suggestion is, rather than define it, his involvement as a committee, that instead we just committees have different requirements than a liaison.
Just from a legal perspective, I think the way I'm viewing those 2 columns is you have your standing committees, which would be Brown Act compliant committees. And then you have a column of ad hoc committees. And I was viewing that as just kind of and it's up to you how you want to define it, but I read that as a shorthand to define these are the folks that aren't subject to the Brown Act because they aren't standing committees. These are either 1 or 2 commissioners that are acting on behalf of or providing, acting in an advisory capacity to the commission without being a Brown Act body.
But don't committees require some sort of agenda before they have and some sort of track record, even if they're ad hoc?
An ad hoc committee, I would say, does not necessarily have all those formalities. That would be a Brown Act committee where you'd have to have some sort of report of the actions and an agenda and a notice and things like that. An ad hoc committee can be a very informal 1 or 2 members talking among themselves without the Brown Act notice requirements and all of those other things.
I think the concept with the ad hoc committee was for a limited duration for a specific task. So it's not an ongoing committee like a standing committee meets every year, but an ad hoc committee would just address a specific topic.
Correct. There are constraints in the Brown Act about what may be an ad hoc committee. It has to be something temporary. It doesn't have a regular meeting schedule. It has to have as the chair was mentioning, kind of a temporary purpose that has an end to it. It doesn't go on. It's not, finance committee, which would have an ongoing subject matter jurisdiction.
And what's the definition of a liaison?
To clarify, if I could,
Please do.
I brought this up for the liaison officer to the Army Corps because of Commissioner Domerant's background and knowledge, so that I recommended him to be the liaison officer for us to go to the Army Corps for the specific reason when I meet with the Army Corps or I'm interacting with the Army Corps, Commissioner Domerant will go with me and help me understand more of the Army Corps and get the district to be better aligned with the Army Corps to take advantage of any funding sources we can identify out. I do see your confusion on why it's under an ad hoc committee, because I don't view it as under the committees. It really is a standalone liaison officer to the district. Same thing, last year we had a liaison officer for sea level rise issues that would report back on sea level rise issues from other committees. We don't have that this year because we're pretty integrated now with the sea level group. But the Army Corps, we're still not that closely integrated, and I would like to be more integrated. And that's why I recommended to the board that we assign Commissioner Gomerad as a liaison outside of the committee realm.
Exactly, that was my goal.
So you're right, it should be, I don't think it should be listed under ad hoc, and we can make that amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Chankrali.
I actually have a suggestion because for my fire board, we actually have liaisons
Oh,
and they're
okay.
called liaisons. So I do think it's important to have the Army Corps of Engineers liaison on the board just based on his extensive experience. And given that we're dealing with the driving issues with projects that we're dealing with, maybe we just have a liaison section, Army Corps of Engineers liaison.
Yes.
That's what I
So-
heard Jim say.
Yeah, but actually call it liaison and not, and take it
Not
out
call
of
it
the ad
committee.
hoc committee.
Yeah.
That's what I heard Jim say.
And we can amend the minutes to that.
Do we need to make a motion?
My opinion is that we're discussing this now.
Yeah.
And we're gonna bring the minutes back again for the vote. So I don't know if a motion is necessary to do that.
We can just
I'll leave it
refer
to
the
the
minutes, the approval of the minutes to the next meeting. Maybe
Yes,
that's-
yeah,
Okay.
but I would just have that separate category called liaison.
Well, I mean, the minutes are intended to reflect the action taken by the board last time. And so what was the action taken with the board? I mean, this is intended to reflect that. I think what I'm hearing is perhaps the classification of ad hoc committees is confusing. And so if it's just to clarify in the minutes that Commissioner Damarat was appointed a liaison, then you could just either, I don't know, the heading could say liaison
Liaison,
slash ad
yes,
hoc
not
committee
committees, yeah.
or something. I don't
We
think
could
you're
do
taking action to actually change the
Change it.
classification. You're just making sure the minutes
We're
properly
clarifying.
reflect.
Are you okay with that?
I would prefer that a liaison is not under committees. I think we could have a separate column that says liaison, Army Corps of Engineers, Damarat,
And that just
and
clarifies, so
Yeah, I
we can do
agree.
that.
The other, I mean, we've got that on the fire board, where there are specific liaisons to like the Creek JPA or the EMS JPA.
right. Thank you.
Okay, can we then just give that clarification for the minutes be corrected that way and approve the minutes?
Yeah, so-
Okay.
You already did.
But I do think you need a motion and
You
to
do,
vote
yeah.
on the minutes as corrected to
Can I-
reflect the changes.
Can I get a motion
Does he
to,
do that, that I don't have to
Well, I'll make a
do that?
motion to approve the
Okay.
minutes.
as
to-
corrected?
As amended,
As amended.
to make a separate section for
We
liaison.
can do a motion like that, then I don't have to bring them back.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
make that motion.
I'll second it.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve amended minutes,
Minutes as amended.
minutes as amended for the previous meeting.
We also have a public comment.
Oh, okay, well, let's take a public comment then. Yes, let's do that now.
Go ahead, Captain Smitty.
Madam Smitty, if you can unmute yourself. Our policy is not to use chat on a board meeting. unless we can figure this out technically, I recommend that we continue to move forward.
Captain Smitty, can you unmute yourself? Yeah,
Yeah.
he's there, but I think we're having a bit of a delay. Captain Smitty, I'll email you and you can send her. Okay.
Hand is down.
Yeah.
Is he gonna email a comment or, do you know, or?
I actually have an email. I'll
Okay, well, let's kind of leave that open, and maybe we move down to item number 5 temporarily, just in the interest of moving forward. Commissioner Chankrali, you had something you wish to report under item number 5 of the consent calendar.
Yeah, I pulled this just to, well, for the purpose of understanding or getting more information about the Surfers Beach sand replenishment pilot project. And I know we've talked about this over and over again. It's the dredging issue, and we're going on 8 years. And I know that we've made a lot of progress. So thank you, Jim and John, especially because you've been here a lot longer than Jim, and you've been so involved with this. What I am concerned about is the issue, which seems to be prolonged. And in your report, Jim, you had mentioned that you and Commissioner Don met with one shoreline. And I just don't want them working at odds with us. Project that's been in the making for 8 years and that the community expects to happen. And so I just want to find out, as Tom, Commissioner Mateo mentioned, I mean, how can we get this thing moved? Seems like it's one thing after another. And it finds money in some sense. What can we do to expedite things?
One shoreline and won't affect this project.
So it could later on. I mean, I don't know what the unintended consequences might be.
Yeah, we'll complete this project and keep one shoreline involved with how the project's going and integrated into the future, of course. And we're working closely with one shoreline and hope to be coming to the board with one shoreline's presentation about what we've been talking about and what their results of their study was. We hope to do that in the near future. With respect to how to move it faster, both myself, John, and Mr. Dammits have been contacting the Coastal Commission, contacting the Marine Sanctuary, and doing our best to encourage a speedy review and response. But the feedback I'm receiving is that they're moving as fast as they can. And I don't know how to speed that process up.
Well, I mean, should we have more community involvement? I mean, I guarantee you that people would be like, what's going on? How do you get this thing faster? I mean, it does seem like that we're, as Tom said, on the lower rungs of the ladder. And I'm not blaming you, I get it. I mean, over the last 3 years, we've had a lot of, constraints with the pandemic and the uncertainty of the work environment, all of that, just the processes in general, permitting and otherwise. But we're going on 8 years now, I mean, ever since I got on the board.
Through the chair, also, Bill Duro said about a year ago that the permitting had totally been complete. Totally.
Except
He didn't say close to, He said the permit's all in place. And we don't get much higher than him around here.
They're not all in place.
This is public comment.
Regretfully, there's been some complications to the project with the eelgrass, Tom, that a year ago didn't exist. And
What are those?
we unfortunately discovered that there is eelgrass.
More?
Yeah,
There is.
No, but it exists. No, I know, but I
Yeah.
mean, but that's been an issue.
Just a year ago, less than a year ago, during the eelgrass survey, determined that in fact that there was enough eelgrass that we ended up having to mitigate for, and then had to come up with the entire plan to again move some of the finer sediment from around the launch ramp and move it to a donor site or to a site from the donor site around the launch ramp to the inner portion of the outer breakwater right at the West Trail, and then remove and replant eelgrass there. I do believe that our consultant Damitz, that everybody's familiar with, I think the whole community's familiar with him and his excellent relationship with all the permitting agencies. I believe he's doing the best that is possible at present to expedite the project. And then, as you're all aware, as we talked about earlier, the general manager also was able to get with the Coastal Commission when they were having their meeting here, and commissioners also attended that. But the general manager and consultant Damitz took that opportunity to twist their arm to meet them out at the Surfers Beach, at the Surfers Beach prior to going to the West Trail. Yeah, so that was an excellent opportunity to expedite or try our best to expedite the project. It may very well be that at some point here, again, I'll say that my conversations with our consultant Damitz, who we all have a lot of confidence in, he is not given up hope yet and is still optimistic that we're going to be able to move forward with at least a portion of the eelgrass mitigation, dredging and replanting this season. It may be that if and when his efforts prove fruitless, that he may want to resort to or want to try to have more influence from commissioners' help, for instance, and others that the general manager has already been talking to. At present, we're trying to, Damitz is trying to work with the Coastal Commission staff and work, of course, very amicably to expedite the process in a non-adversarial way.
Yeah, well, no one wants to be adversarial. We just want the project to be done.
We all do, that's for sure, for certain.
So the material needed for eel planting, do we need to remove before we get access to the material that we need for the beach?
No,
It's isolated, separate and isolated.
Yes, it's a different area where there's more nutrients and finer sand. Yeah, by the launch ramp.
The sand material for the beach portion, you have permits to do that? Or is that the one we need from Marines from Sanctuary?
We've got, I believe, all the permits necessary from the sanctuary. I think it's all just the project being approved in order to move forward by the coastal commission
to do the eelgrass. What I'm trying to think is, can we phase it differently so the sediment available for the beach we can do now, then later come back, get the sediment for the eelgrass, plant the eelgrass. But at this point, this summer, early summer, we can take the sand we need for the beach.
The mobilization cost, I believe, would cost prohibitive.
In addition, I think it is my understanding anyway that it's that the moving of sand from the outer harbor of Pillar Point Harbor to Surfers Beach is contingent on us first doing the mitigation with the eelgrass. In fact, there is areas that we do want to remove sand from that has eelgrass on it. Therefore, we would have to, they would pretty much have to, I guess, just blindly trust us that we will later replant.
The blind trust, but then another possibility. And then plant the eelgrass later when it's appropriate for eelgrass to be planted if permits, don't show up till. In other words, it's, so that way you're not mobilizing twice. You can move the material needed for eelgrass, you could do the beach. Planting happens when it's most appropriate, but they'll already have their material. It's got to be relatively shallow, I guess. So maybe there's a way to cover that with some type of material so you don't get erosion if you have to wait a year.
Right, that's what I'm concerned about.
So get this, kind of face it.
I mean, it could be a vicious cycle, right? That would be a perpetuating
And
situation.
we'll never do the 70 to 100,000.
Because.
But they have our commitment to do that. So maybe we need to look at, maybe talk with some of the commissioners, coastal commissioners. Get that sand on that beach.
I just think I don't think we're being treated at the bottom of the barrel.
I'm not saying.
I think we're in the same process as everybody else, and it's a staffing issue. Brad is a very optimistic person, and he believes he might be able to start the project. I don't know. It's very risky right now. We will know a lot more in 30 days. And that's when Brad's going to come back and give you a full report exactly on where we're at, what's outstanding, if anything, and what's the realistic start date. So we do have this topic to be discussed in full length at the next board meeting.
Okay, it just seems like the whole eelgrass situation, mitigation situation is a condition for us to even do anything, but I like the approach. Right, and so I like that approach of looking at things differently if it's cost effective.
Right.
If it's a condition, it can be a perpetuating condition.
And Brad may very well, be able to answer all of the questions with regard to, thinking outside the box. And I would have to say that I believe he's already thought of every single angle. But, you can ask him specifically, next month, and he'll know more next month about where we stand as well.
Thank you. That's all I have for this.
I guess my last comment would be maybe Brad could look at for that meeting, worst case scenario, are there any impact on funding or on grants or anything else? And I know, just as an example, the Corps has a program called the Regional Sediment Management Program. That program has been funding Pillar Point some stuff for the Corps to do, and they keep 8 years worth, they keep pushing it. So every year the Corps will come to Brad and say, well, because I'm not sure how long they can keep that money for us.
Yeah, that's a great.
So there may be some other things like that, and there may not be. I know for this year, that question was asked, and the RSNP, it will hold that money over and until they know we're not going to do it for another year. I'm not sure.
I mean, that's where the time is money.
That's the timing thing. But it may not matter at that point, because if agency and until you move the eelgrass or replant.
That's where we're at.
I think that's
we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out
Our next month.
Okay, that's all I have.
Do we, Melanie, do we have any public comments on this? Any hands raised? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the monthly capital projects update.
So I'll second. It's basically to receive the property.
Just, to receive that.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve the monthly capital updates.
And I second it.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
Aye.
Hi.
All right.
Okay, now moving back to the minutes from number 2, did we ever get any connection with the comments from anybody?
I actually emailed him and asked him to send them to me. So.
Okay, well, we can move forward then with our motion, which I think we had a motion.
No, it's
Yeah,
already.
okay.
We passed it.
Oh, I don't know that we
No, I
did a
don't
roll
think
call.
We didn't do a roll
Oh,
call.
yeah, it's holding that in advance.
Oh,
Please,
so
we
I
have
made the
comment.
motion to approve the minutes with that amendment to add the section for liaisons.
Right.
Right.
And
different-
broken out
A
of,
new column.
yeah, broken out of ad hoc.
And Slade Carter,
Yeah.
seconded that. Can we have a roll call, please? Then?
Commissioner Donrock?
Yes.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Jane Crowley? Aye. Commissioner Slater Carter?
Yes.
Okay, is there any public comment on the closed session item?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. Portable actions. Oh, we're back from,
Go ahead. Zach.
we are back from our closed session, and there are no reportable items from the closed session, which moves us on to future agenda items. The only one that I would want to comment on is that when we all have a chance to meet as committees, we'll provide the input to our general manager, and he will put it together, prepare a short report for the discussion item next meeting.
And there were several additions we wanted for information, but those aren't agenda items. They'll just be incorporated into,
The report to the finance committee.
yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And I'll
Okay.
move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Of course.
Okay. Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Can we have a roll call, please?
President Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Jane Crowley? Aye. Commissioner Slater Carter? No.
Okay.
Commissioner Donrock?
Okay, I guess we're adjourned.
4:13.
Thank you all for your